Midnight Monster here. I scoured the World Wide Web for the most disturbing and unexplainable things that have ever happened to people. Handpicking 8 stories for you guys today. Let's get right into it. Story 1. My mom's whole side of the family was raised Catholics. All went to the same church in a small town in the south. I was there one summer as a kid with my mom. I'm maybe like 10 years old. My uncle's farmland backs up right at the church. Anyways, things haven't been going so well on the farm. Crops not growing right. Healthy animals randomly dropping dead. Chickens and small creatures showing up gutted, even though he had a donkey to protect his cattle. Just weird shit that's never happened before. So, one day, the adults are acting super weird and cagey. You know, how they act when something big is going down, but they don't want to scare the kids. Yeah, like that. My grandma, mom, uncle, aunt, some older cousins, and the priest and another man from the church are all hanging out at my uncle's farm. And they kick me out of the house to, quote, go play. Naturally, being a very curious kid, I climbed as high as I can in the nearest tree to the house trying to eavesdrop. I hear a snippet of the conversation here and there, but can't figure out what they're up to. Everyone leaves the house following the priest to the barn, where the stables, chicken coops, etc. are. This entire time I'm watching from the tree. While they're all down at the stables, I hear the door to the house open, and a woman I've never seen before, maybe 30 years old with brown hair and a blue dress, casually walks out the door. She briefly looks up at me in the tree. I wave. She ignores me and walks off down the dirt road. Okay then. Once the adults are done with whatever they're doing, we all gather in the dining room of my uncle's house to have some lemonade. My aunt has made it because, well, it was a hot day. I decided to pipe up and ask them who the woman in the blue dress was since I've never seen her visit before. Every adult in the room freaks out. My aunt starts crying, the priest looks like he might barf, and I'm told the woman was just visiting. Okay, whatever. Well, guys, a decade later is when my uncle finally tells me that the woman I saw was an apparition that had started peering at the church and next door on my uncle's land. They assumed she was a lost spirit trying to pass on, but after she attacked the priest at his house, also nearby, and farm animals started showing up dead, they decided she was some sort of demon who appeared as a young woman to hide her true nature. The day I saw her from the tree, the adults had gotten permission from the Catholic Church to perform an exorcism on my uncle's land. It appears I witnessed her leaving. I wonder where she was going. I'm 26 years old today, and the story of Evelyn, as the parishioners started calling her, she'd been spotted inside the church, still gives me goosebumps to this day. She was completely expressionless when she looked up at me in the tree. Did not seem any hurry to leave either. The moment she was gone, the crops started recovering, and we stopped finding dead and killed livestock. I'm not religious, and I generally am a pretty big skeptic, but I'll never be able to explain what I saw from that oak tree that day. I was walking home one evening down the road I still live on when I got the horrendous, creeping tremble between my shoulders and up my neck that I've only ever had once walking alone in a city. I was being followed by some creepy man, but that's a whole different story. So, I was looking around me trying to figure out why I felt like this on a quiet country road in broad daylight. Finally, I noticed a figure across the field next to the road, too far away from me to see any details. I just put it down to the farmer checking his crops and carried on walking. You know, kudos to the spidey senses for picking up something so far away. It was right across a 20-acre field. I carried on walking and the feeling did not subside, so I turned back to look over at the figure to see if they were still staring at me. I was getting pissed off by the thought that some weird dude was just watching me, even from that far away. Ugh, this is where shit gets weird. The figure was now about 3 times closer than they were before, still just watching. Okay, I think. That's some pretty quick sprinting on their part. Too quick, particularly in waist-deep barley, but whatever. I look away again. I pick up the pace a bit, and I'm about a half mile from home at this point. I'm also cursing myself for leaving my phone at home because I wanted to call someone to help. The feelings got worse for about 200 yards, and I don't look into that field. I just march on, determined to reach home. Finally, though, the feeling gets so bad I stop dead in my tracks and turn around. This figure, whatever the fuck it was standing on the road about 50 yards back. Close enough to see details of which there were none. It was just a shadow from which I could see arms, legs, and a head, but no features. No shirt color, no face, nothing in broad daylight. I study this figure for a moment before taking a step back and another. It just stays put, so I shout something like, "Hey, can I help you?" It doesn't move. So I turn around and book it a little bit home, and I was wearing riding boots too, which are a bitch to run in, so I was skidding and sliding all over. When I reached my door, I took a quick look behind me. It was standing at the top of the driveway watching me. I go inside, slam and lock the door, and look out the window. It was gone. Do I know what it was? Nope. Do I want to? Also, probably not. Midnight Monster here. If anyone's ever been in a similar situation or have a story you want to share, drop it in the comments section below and we'll get started with story 3 about a camping event. There was one time I went camping with 2 of my buddies, but neither of them is the real outdoorsy type. I was just kind of getting them into the whole camping and hunting scene. Now, I love hiking. Exploring more like because I hate just walking a trail. You see nothing new, so I took the 2 friends out there away and got 2 miles from the camp when they just wanted to go back. I said fine and showed them where to go on my phone and made them put a waypoint on the other little GPS things I had to follow. I wanted to keep going, so I did, by myself. They wanted the pistol I had on me for safety reasons, leaving me to walk alone in the forest with water and nothing else. No big deal, I thought. I found a steep hillside with rocks down when I was about 5 miles from the camp and decided to go down. I followed the path at the bottom of this thing, which at this point was just a dry riverbed. I walked down and it got steeper as I went further south. When I crossed a certain point, something just felt wrong. I started trying to look around for anything, but there was a huge log across the 2 hillsides, and when I crouched down to crawl under it, it felt like I was being watched. I looked up to my left and saw nothing, looked around to see if there was anything in the middle of the riverbed, then looked up to the right. Huge black canine. Too small to be a bear, but it looked like a wolf on steroids. That dog creature and I held glances for what felt like hours, but I know it could not have been more than 10 seconds. Every passing moment made the feeling of dread worse. I moved back to get the hell out of there, and when I moved, the wolf thing just booked it into the forest further from camp. To walk back was eerie. It did not feel as much as I was being watched as to just the feeling of, will it catch me? And that's why I don't ever hike alone anymore. There was a house way before Ghostbusters on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was a thing that my then boyfriend and our friends liked to go ghost hunting at. There are 2 stories about the house that I have and I've written about before. I'm just gonna write about the one that's more explainable to me for now. Let me get this one key part out of the way though. I was never on drugs or drinking when we went ghost hunting at this house, so this is not the answer for this. So this house, it's been abandoned for years, and the supposed backstory is that the man of the house went crazy, killing his wife and kids and possibly his brother, with an axe. And in the house on the 2nd floor, there were holes in the walls where it looked like someone used an axe to get into the rooms. Now, we'd gone there quite a few times. Little weird shit would happen, no biggie. Not worth writing home to mom about. Just cameras and flashlights not working. This was before cell phones become everywhere. But one night, we decided to go with the bigger group of folks, 10 people in all, instead of the just 4 or 5 of us like usual, since one friend, Rich, had his van that could fit a small army in it. So, we drive up and decide to break into groups of 2. 2 in the attic, 2 on the 2nd floor, and 2 on the 1st ground level, 2 in the basement, and 2 out in the dilapidated barn. Each pair is to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on the floor area. My boyfriend and I end up on the second floor, so we walk up the stairs, and then this is where the shit gets weird. Almost literally. Now, I've been here at least 10 plus times, and I've checked out every nook and cranny. I know it like my own damn house. But suddenly, there's a room I've never seen before. It's a bathroom with a huge claw-footed tub. It connects 2 bedrooms. I swear to all that is holy and unholy, I've never seen this room before. I've walked through the doors and the holes in the walls as I mentioned earlier in all the other rooms. This room was not fucking there before, and it's huge too. Bathroom, not like I could mistake it for a damn closet. And I love claw-footed tubs. You can bet I'd remember such a sweet piece of antique porcelain. I freak out about it. My then boyfriend is trying to tell me it's always been here. Nope, nope, nope. He's got to be fucking with me, right? He makes me stay in this new fucking bathroom the whole 20 minutes, and I'm worried it's going to blink out of existence and take me with it. Well, it doesn't, and we are fine. Nothing usually happens till we all meet back up. Then we get shot at by who fucking knows? And all 10 of us are next to the barn, so we book it into the van and get the fuck out. But I went back later without the boyfriend or anyone else from that night, with some friends had also been there before, and guess what? The bathroom is gone. That is probably always will be the most unexplainable thing I've personally ever come across. It's been 15 years since, and if that house is still standing, I doubt it's safe enough to find out if that bathroom is there or not. My wife and I are avid backpackers. We try to put down at least one 20 to 30 mile weekend trip every month with our ultra light gear. We're fairly experienced at this point, and we've had numerous semi-dangerous encounters with wildlife and other wilderness hazards. We don't get shook easily. We're hiking a ridgeline trail in the late afternoon, planning to take a turn and head down into a drainage to camp near water before it gets dark. We've put down at least 10 miles that day, and we're fairly beat, looking forward to setting up camp and getting dinner going. We see a guy coming up the trail towards us as we turn onto the drainage trail, wearing worn-out clothes. Up close, he's a white guy of an undetermined age, somewhere between the late 30s and late 40s. We acknowledge each other and strike up a little conversation on the trail. The first thing I notice is his accent. It's American, but it's not the accent of the area we're in, and it's kind of, well, old-time-ish. There's a kind of music or little note to it, not a drawl. It's vaguely familiar, like something I've heard but can't quite recall. My wife is chatting with him while I puzzle his accent out, and then I notice he's covered with tattoos. Weird ones. I have ink, so I'm not one to judge someone just for having a tattoo, but I've never seen anything like these before. They're not standard, hard-ass tattoos or pictures. It's almost like writing, but not in any alphabet I've ever seen. And it's arranged in a way that makes me think they're also a picture, if seen in full, like a Magic Eye game made up of some indecipherable script and inked on this man's skin. I'm now getting an inching of something is very wrong here feeling from this guy, where I hear him say to my wife, "There's a great campsite down by the stream. Lots of campers have used it." I realize that we're an hour from sundown and at least 10 miles from anything, and this guy has nothing with him. Not a backpack, not a water bottle, no warm layer. It's autumn and we're rather up in high elevation. Just the clothes on his back, and none of which anything are distinguishable about. No logos or visible brands of any kind, and it's quite worn out. He's about to get overnight on the trail without any gear of any kind, and only the one campsite is 6 miles of where we're standing. I hear my wife say, "That's where we're going to camp. Thanks for the suggestion." He smiles at us, his teeth are pointed, I assume filled, and curved inwards towards the back of his mouth. I don't mean just his incisors, I mean his front teeth on both top and bottom. I nod my agreement and say, "Hey man, enjoy the rest of your hike." And then we continue. In another mile or two, we go down to the stream, and the campsite's lovely. Beautiful green grass about 3 inches high, flat, dry, easy water access. However, there's no sign that anyone has camped there in a very long while. As we're looking over in the field, we see a ton of stakes in the ground. Usually you find a stake or two at high traffic campsites just because people forget them when they're, packing up their camp in the morning. We found more than 10 of wildly different ages and designs, some old school and rusty, others new and shiny. But none of the grass is bent or broken except for ones we stepped on checking the site. Wordlessly, we both shouldered our packs and hiked another, thankfully flat and easy 6 or 7 miles to the next site. I'm neither spiritual nor superstitious, but I've never had any other experience that filled me with a sense of unexplainable fear or impending doom the way this one did. So, I was plagued by pretty bad sleep paralysis for the majority of my childhood. I would fall asleep normally and wake up with my face in the pillow, unable to move my body as I suffocated. No idea how I even survived those moments, to be honest. Other times, I'd hear loud whispering from multiple voices that I could not understand. It was just outside my doorway, or hear loud static and the doors open and close. Standard sleep paralysis, hallucinations, and whatnot. It's rarely an issue anymore because I've altered the way I fall asleep. It only really happens now if I'm in such a state of exhaustion that I can't fall into proper sleep, and kind of end up in limbo between being asleep and awake. Anyways, late last summer I had just gotten back from visiting family over in England. I was exhausted from traveling. I ended up falling asleep as I watched something on my iPad, and had some dream that I really can't remember the details of. All that I remember was that I had fallen asleep in the dream. The doors in the hallway of this house that I was in started to open and shut, as if someone was looking for someone, example, me. At this point, my dream self had woken up and was pretending to be asleep when the door to the room I was in opened up. I ended up waking up as well, sort of. If you've experienced sleep paralysis, you should know what I mean. I was in that moment when you're conscious that you're not in your dream anymore because you're aware of your surroundings and can feel your body just being immobile, heavy sacks of meat and bones. Once I woke up, I felt this immense pressure, like someone much heavier than me was putting their weight on my back, as they leaned over to whisper in my ear. I tried moving, and of course I could not. I started to hear ambient noises as if it was wind whipping up in my room, but it had been through a filter and ended up kind of muted. As the pressure on my back increased, I heard a very deep, sinister voice loudly say,
"No one's gonna save you."
I jolted right up after that, grasping dramatically like people tend to do in the movies and TV and such. If it wasn't 3 a.m., I probably would have gone and crawled into my mom's bed despite being 20 years old. I just tried not to cry instead and turned on the lights. I ended up forcing myself to stay awake until the sun came up, just in case it happened again. My parents moved into a house not long ago with, in decorative terms, drastically required bringing Fords from the 1970s. They brought some builders in and set about, however, have told me that upon restoring the place, a few odd things happened that, in addition to making them uneasy, nearly drove the workmen from completing their job. The initial happenings came in from a random knocking and banging that you can sort of explain in a way. However, one day, they heard a crashing sound like a wall had given way in the house. They ran from their bedroom to check it out, but could not find an explanation. A further occurrence was claimed while my parents were out and the workmen were at their jobs. They said that they heard a large bang from the bathroom, and upon running to see what's gone wrong, their radiator had been torn from the wall where it lay on the floor. A couple of wooden cabinet units had been piled on top of it. What made this even stranger was that, when they investigated, 2 footprints were found in the dust that had settled from the ongoing work. Weirder still was that they were bare footprints and both on the left feet, even though they were right next to each other. When my parents got home, the workmen were talking to them and threatened to leave without finishing the job. While they were talking, both they and my parents claimed they could hear a faint singing sound without words. They did eventually persuade the workmen to persist, although I assume they must have heard some shit to threaten walking from a big job in the first place. I woke up from a dream. In short, I came to a hill with a bunch of people who I knew were my husband's deceased relatives and ancestors. I recognized no one. One person talked with me, but he was a man in uniform that also turned to me and smiled at me. No one else looked at me but these two, and the man in the uniform did not say a word, but I focused on him and felt relaxed, content and peace. I woke up and asked my husband to pull out the old genealogy stuff that he worked on as a teenager and show me the paperwork. I've never seen any of it before and have never really been interested in it, but this dream was so real. Quick edit. My husband's a skeptic but figured that it wasn't a big deal to go with it. Unbeknownst to me, there were a few pictures with all of his research. Again, I've never seen any of this stuff. As I'm leafing through the photos, I see one of the men in uniform who was smiling at me in my dream. I asked my husband who this man was. My husband doesn't know. Later that day, we go to my mother-in-law's house. I sheepishly tell her about the dream and show her the picture. I know that she's going to think I'm crazy, but whatever. I need to know who this man is. I show her the picture. It's her uncle, her father's brother, and my husband never met him. Here's where it gets freaky. My mother-in-law tells us that it's strange we were even showing her this picture. She was going through her attic and found old boxes a few days before our visit. Among other things, she found old letters that this uncle wrote her dad while he was serving in World War II. She decided to burn them in her fireplace just a few days before our visit because the letters were gruesome and personal. As she was doing it, she thought about this uncle. Although he had survived the war, he never was the same when he came back. He never was happy. She thought about this as she was burning those letters. I told her that I got the sense from my dream that he was at peace. When I woke up, I still felt that peace. She appreciated me telling her this. Okay guys, Midnight Monster here. If you enjoyed today's 8 stories, make sure you smash that like button and do subscribe to the channel. I have daily videos of the most unexplained paranormal type stories that are guaranteed to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. If that sounds like a good time, I hope to see you in the next video.